If you enjoy videos like this, subscribe to the channel before the video starts. It was a quiet morning in the small, peaceful neighborhood by the lake. Birds chirped, the sun was rising slowly, and the water reflected the soft golden light like a mirror. From the outside, everything looked perfect: calm streets, neat houses, and smiling neighbors. But inside one particular house, the story was very different. This was the house of Alex. Alex was someone who loved the peace of the lake more than anything else. Every morning, they would sit on the deck with a cup of coffee, looking at the water and listening to the soft waves. It was their escape, their personal paradise. But lately, that paradise had turned into a battlefield. The HOA, the Homeowners Association, was breathing down Alex's neck. Every week, there was a new notice, a new fine, or a complaint. "You cannot park here," one notice said. "Your lawn is not up to code," another read. "You must remove your dock," yet another demanded. It felt like they were trying to push Alex out, slowly but surely. Alex knew they had done nothing wrong. The rules seemed small, petty, and sometimes unfair. But the HOA had power, or at least, they thought they did. They walked around with clipboards, making notes, giving warnings, and threatening residents. But Alex had something they didn't know. Something that could change everything. It all started a few weeks ago when the HOA sent a formal letter, claiming that Alex's dock on the lake was unapproved. They demanded that it be removed immediately. Alex read the letter twice, slowly, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. How could a small wooden dock, right on their property, be illegal? How could the HOA have the audacity to make such demands? Instead of panicking, Alex smiled quietly. Because Alex knew a secret the HOA could never imagine. The lake, yes, the lake itself, was under Alex's control. It wasn't just a piece of water. Alex had rights, permits, and connections that meant they could use the lake in ways the HOA could not touch. And that dock? It was only the beginning. That morning, as Alex walked to the deck, a new letter had arrived. It was marked urgent. The HOA wanted a meeting, and their tone was sharp, almost threatening. "We will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Failure to comply will result in penalties," it read. Alex took a deep breath, holding the paper tightly. "They think they can scare me," Alex muttered under their breath. "They have no idea who they're dealing with." Alex knew the HOA members personally. They were polite on the outside but controlling and arrogant in their hearts. They walked around like kings of the neighborhood, deciding who could plant flowers where and who could park where. But Alex had spent years understanding the lake, the land, and the rules that really mattered. And now, that knowledge was about to become their weapon. The morning sun reflected off the water, sparkling like diamonds. Alex stared at the lake and felt a rush of confidence. "This is mine. They cannot take this from me." They looked at the mailbox in the neat streets beyond, realizing that the HOA had no real power here. They could send letters, fine people, and make threats, but Alex held the key. And soon, the HOA would learn that trying to push someone out when you control the most important part of the neighborhood was a very bad idea. By mid-morning, neighbors were going about their routines. Kids played near the water's edge, and joggers ran along the streets. But in Alex's house, there was a tension building. The kind of tension that makes stories interesting, the kind that makes people lean forward and ask, "What will happen next?" Alex decided to prepare. They reviewed the lake permits, the property boundaries, and even old agreements that many residents had forgotten. Everything was in order. Everything was legal. And everything was about to give Alex the upper hand. They smiled, knowing that while the HOA might control the parking rules and send notices, Alex controlled the lake, the heart of the neighborhood. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Alex froze for a moment. Could it be the HOA? Or maybe a neighbor with news? Slowly, Alex walked to the door and peeked through the window. Outside stood Mr. Thompson, the HOA president, looking serious, clipboard in hand. "Good morning, Alex," Mr. Thompson said in a firm voice. "We need to talk about your dock. And your parking situation. It's come to our attention that there are violations." Alex nodded, calmly, letting Mr. Thompson speak. Inside, Alex was already planning. Every word, every gesture of the HOA was predictable. They didn't know that the lake and the parking were Alex's secret weapons. Alex had plans that would make the HOA regret ever thinking they had control. As Mr. Thompson talked, Alex's mind raced. They thought about the lake, the dock, and the single parking spot that every resident depended on. If I play this right, Alex thought, they won't just fail to push me out, they will be at my mercy. The conversation ended with Mr. Thompson leaving a warning note and walking away, confident that the HOA still had the upper hand. But Alex closed the door with a quiet smile. This was just the beginning. The real story was about to unfold. And as the camera of imagination zoomed out, showing the sparkling lake, the quiet streets, and Alex standing strong in the middle of it all, one thing was clear: the HOA had started a battle they could not win. Alex was calm, confident, and ready. And the lake, their secret power, was about to speak louder than any HOA notice ever could. The story was only starting. And anyone watching, anyone listening, would know one thing for certain: this was not going to be an ordinary neighborhood fight. This was going to be something much bigger. Something they would never forget. The next morning, the neighborhood felt quieter than usual. The sun rose slowly, casting long shadows across the streets, but the usual sounds of children laughing and dogs barking seemed muted. Something in the air had changed. Alex could feel it. It wasn't just the HOA's letters anymore. The messages had turned into a presence, constant, suffocating, almost like a shadow following Alex everywhere. Every time Alex walked outside, there seemed to be an invisible line, a tension hovering between them and the other residents. The HOA was watching. Waiting. Judging. Alex stepped onto the deck and stared at the lake. The water shimmered as if nothing had changed, but Alex knew better. The HOA thought they had control. They thought they could push Alex around with rules, fines, and threats. But Alex had plans, and more importantly, they had leverage that the HOA could never touch. A notification popped up on Alex's phone. Another letter from the HOA, this time demanding that Alex remove their boat from the lake by the end of the week. Violation of community rules, it said. Alex chuckled softly. They had seen this coming. The HOA didn't know the full story, and they were about to learn it slowly, painfully, and publicly. Alex's neighbor, Mrs. Patel, came out to the street, frowning as she held a letter in her hand. "Alex, they're really going after you this time," she whispered. "They're saying your dock is dangerous, and your parking space is, well, let's just say they're threatening fines if anyone uses it." Alex smiled faintly. "That's exactly why I didn't panic," Alex said. "They don't see the bigger picture. They think power comes from rules. But power comes from control." The HOA had made one critical mistake: they believed that the rules themselves were enough to scare Alex. They didn't understand that Alex had been quietly observing them for years. Every action, every decision, every little weakness. And now, that knowledge gave Alex an advantage they could use at exactly the right moment. By midday, Alex decided to take a walk along the lake's edge. The water lapped gently against the shore, almost like it was whispering encouragement. Alex's eyes scanned the surroundings, noting every detail: the only parking spot in the neighborhood, the small pier that everyone used to access the lake, and the narrow path that led from the street to the water. Everything mattered. Everything was a part of the plan. Then came the confrontation. A black SUV rolled down the street, and Mr. Thompson stepped out again, clipboard in hand, face set like stone. "Alex," he called, "you need to comply with the HOA rules. This is your last warning." Alex raised an eyebrow and leaned against the railing. "Last warning?" they said, voice calm but sharp. "Mr. Thompson, have you forgotten who owns this lake? Or who controls the only parking spot everyone depends on?" Mr. Thompson froze. He wasn't expecting this tone. For the first time, a flicker of doubt appeared in his eyes. Alex continued, leaning closer, their voice almost a whisper that carried a weight far beyond the words. "You see, all these rules, all these fines, they mean nothing if the lake and the parking spot are under my control. You can threaten notices all you want, but the truth is, without my cooperation, your HOA has nothing." Mr. Thompson straightened, trying to regain authority. But Alex could see the cracks forming. Every time the HOA tried to control the residents, they forgot that someone always had the bigger picture. Someone always knew the unseen rules. Alex's mind was already planning the next steps. Every threat from the HOA, every complaint, was an opportunity to turn the situation around. They would show the HOA that real control didn't come from paperwork or letters, it came from influence, timing, and leverage. And in this neighborhood, Alex had all three. As Mr. Thompson drove away, fuming but silent, Alex smiled quietly. The HOA thought they had created a problem, but Alex knew it was just the beginning of a much larger game. A game where the rules were different, the stakes were higher, and the player in control was Alex. By the evening, the lake reflected the sunset like a fiery mirror. Alex stood on the deck, watching the water ripple gently, imagining the upcoming confrontation. The tension was thick, but instead of fear, Alex felt exhilaration. This wasn't just a neighborhood dispute. This was a chessboard. Every move mattered, and Alex had already set the pieces in their favor. The HOA thought they could push, they could threaten, they could intimidate. But Alex had patience, knowledge, and something they couldn't see, the lake and the only parking spot in the neighborhood, the silent, ultimate power that could change everything. And as darkness fell, the real story began to take shape. One that would make every resident, every HOA member, understand something very clearly: in this neighborhood, power wasn't given by rules. Power was earned, controlled, and respected. And Alex had it all. The morning fog rolled over the lake, curling around the edges like a soft, white blanket. Alex stood on the dock, staring at the still water, feeling the weight of the neighborhood's tension pressing in. The HOA had tried to scare them, tried to intimidate with letters and warnings, but Alex had a secret, a quiet advantage that nobody could see. Most residents thought the lake was just a pretty view, a place to swim or fish. Most thought the parking spot near the water was just another convenience. But Alex knew better. The lake was power. And the parking spot, well, that was the real leverage. Alex smiled faintly, remembering the first day they had realized it. While neighbors were distracted by HOA meetings and minor rules, Alex had quietly studied every boundary, every access point, every permit and document that mattered. It wasn't just the land or the water, they had control over the very life of the neighborhood. At that moment, a car drove down the street, stopping at the only parking spot near the lake. It was Mr. Thompson, the HOA president, once again trying to assert authority. But Alex had already predicted this. Every step he took, every confident stride, was part of a pattern. And patterns were predictable. "Good morning, Alex," Mr. Thompson said, stepping out of the car. His voice was polite, but there was an edge to it, a mixture of anger and disbelief. "We need to talk about your dock and your parking. The rules are clear, and..." Alex held up a hand, smiling calmly. "Mr. Thompson," Alex said, voice steady and calm, "do you really understand what you're dealing with?" For the first time, Mr. Thompson hesitated. His brow furrowed. Alex continued, pointing toward the lake. "This lake," Alex said slowly, letting the words sink in, "is under my control. Every inch, every access point, every dock. You may have rules, but without my cooperation, you cannot use it. You cannot enforce your orders here." Mr. Thompson opened his mouth, but Alex raised a finger again, cutting him off. "And this parking spot," Alex added, eyes glinting, "the only one that lets residents access the lake safely, conveniently, guess who controls it?" Mr. Thompson froze, realizing that Alex wasn't bluffing. The letters, the threats, the fines, they meant nothing if Alex decided to act. They couldn't tow cars without permission. They couldn't block lake access legally. The HOA had power on paper, but Alex had real power in practice. Alex walked slowly toward the edge of the water, letting the sunlight glint off the surface. "Everything you depend on," Alex said softly, "everything your members use, everything your rules rely on, it's all mine. And I can decide how it's used." Mr. Thompson swallowed hard, feeling the sudden shift. The confidence that Alex radiated was undeniable. For years, he had assumed that rules, penalties, and HOA authority were enough to control the neighborhood. But Alex had shown that control was more than just papers and fines. It was influence, timing, and leverage, the kind of leverage you couldn't fake. Alex knew that this revelation would shake the HOA to its core. And that was the point. It wasn't just about the lake or the parking spot, it was about proving that the HOA couldn't bully someone who knew how to protect themselves. Alex's advantage wasn't physical, it was psychological. It was subtle. It was quiet. And it was deadly effective. By the time the sun was high in the sky, the neighborhood looked the same. The water shimmered. Birds flew overhead. Kids played nearby. But for Alex, the world had shifted. They had revealed just enough of their power to make the HOA hesitate, just enough to show that the balance had changed. And as Mr. Thompson drove away, his usual arrogance replaced with unease, Alex stood on the dock, staring at the sparkling lake. The secret was out. The advantage was clear. And the real game, the game where rules didn't matter, where control meant everything, was just beginning. The lake whispered back in response, almost like a partner in crime, rippling gently against the wooden posts. Alex smiled, knowing that from this point on, every move the HOA made could be countered. Every threat could be answered. Every attempt to intimidate could be turned into their own weakness. For the audience watching this story unfold, one thing was certain, Alex wasn't just fighting the HOA. Alex controlled the battlefield itself. And now, the real suspense began. How far would the HOA push before realizing that their power was meaningless without Alex's consent? And in the quiet, golden morning light, the lake reflected a simple truth: in this neighborhood, true control was invisible. It wasn't on paper. It wasn't in meetings. It was in the hands of the person who understood the rules, the leverage, and the quiet power that no one dared challenge. The sun was setting over the neighborhood, painting the lake with streaks of orange and gold. The calm of the evening was deceptive. Alex could feel it. A storm was coming, not from nature, but from the people who thought they could control them. Mr. Thompson and 2 other HOA members arrived in their cars, each one parked near the lake's only spot. Their faces were tight with determination, but there was a hint of doubt lurking beneath the surface. They had tried letters, warnings, fines, but Alex had revealed a truth they hadn't expected. Control didn't lie in rules, it lay in influence. And Alex held all of it. "Alex," Mr. Thompson started, walking toward the dock with a forced calm, "this is your final warning. You must remove the dock and comply with parking rules. The HOA has decided." Alex cut him off with a raised hand and a smile that didn't reach the eyes. "Mr. Thompson," Alex said slowly, "you've come a long way to tell me what I already know. I appreciate your determination. But tell me, do you really understand who controls this lake?" Mr. Thompson hesitated. The other 2 members looked at each other nervously, glancing at the water, as if the lake itself could punish them. Alex leaned slightly on the railing, calm, almost casual. But inside, their mind was racing, calculating every step of the confrontation. "You see," Alex continued, "this dock, this lake, even the only parking spot your residents use, they all depend on me. Without my cooperation, you cannot enforce anything. You can threaten, you can fine, but your power ends where mine begins." The words hit like a punch. The HOA members exchanged looks. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, trying to regain authority. We have bylaws. Legal rights. You can't just." Alex smiled wider, their voice steady and sharp. "Bylaws, Mr. Thompson, don't matter here. Do you really want to test it? Because I can make this lake, and your precious parking spot, off limits whenever I choose." One of the members stepped forward, attempting to assert dominance. "We have the authority." "You cannot." Alex's eyes narrowed. "Authority? You mean letters? You mean threats? Let me ask you something, can you tow cars from this spot right now?" "No." "Can you stop people from using the dock legally?" "No." "Can you touch the lake?" "Not without my permission." That is the difference between paper power and real power. A tense silence filled the air. The lake shimmered quietly, reflecting the golden sunset, almost as if agreeing with Alex. Every eye was on the dock, on the water, on Alex, the calm figure who held the invisible strings of control. Mr. Thompson's confidence began to falter. For years, he had assumed he was untouchable, that rules gave him supremacy. But Alex's calm and clever display of leverage was slowly cracking his armor. The HOA's threats, their planning, their authority, none of it mattered here. "You're making a mistake," Mr. Thompson said finally, his voice lower, more cautious than before. "This can get serious. Legal consequences." Alex tilted their head slightly, lips curling into a small, knowing smile. "Legal consequences? Perhaps. But whose side would the law really be on if the residents cannot even access their lake or parking without me? Think about it. Who actually holds the power here?" The other HOA member fidgeted. It was obvious now, they had underestimated Alex. They thought this would be a simple confrontation, another letter delivered, another threat. Instead, they had walked into a reality where the balance of power had shifted completely. Alex's mind raced with possibilities, but outwardly, they were composed, almost serene. Every threat, every argument, every attempt at intimidation had an answer. They could restrict access subtly, create small inconveniences, or simply sit back and let the HOA dig their own frustration. Finally, Mr. Thompson straightened his shoulders, his face a mask of forced composure. We will review this. But this isn't over." Alex nodded, eyes still fixed on the lake. "I hope not," Alex said softly. "Because every move you make from here on, I will be ready. And remember, this lake, this dock, this parking spot, they are not yours to control. They never were." The HOA members got back into their cars and drove off, their confidence shaken, their plan unraveling. The neighborhood returned to its quiet evening calm, but something had changed. The HOA had been challenged, humiliated in subtle ways, and Alex had revealed that real control didn't come from rules, it came from leverage, strategy, and knowing your own power. As darkness fell, Alex stood alone on the dock, watching the gentle waves lap at the shore. The first confrontation was over, but the war was only beginning. And one thing was certain, the HOA had no idea what was coming next. The lake reflected the moonlight now, calm, mysterious, and powerful, the perfect symbol of Alex's advantage. And for anyone watching this unfold, it was clear, in this neighborhood, the real power had a name. And that name was Alex. The neighborhood woke to a strange tension in the air. Mailboxes were full of HOA notices, cars were parked in unusual spots, and whispers traveled from house to house. The HOA had escalated. Their polite letters had turned into sharp warnings, fines, and threats of legal action. They wanted results. And they wanted Alex out. But Alex knew this escalation was predictable. Every time someone tried to push, there was an opportunity to counter. And Alex had patience, the quiet kind that waited for the perfect moment. By mid-morning, Mr. Thompson and two other HOA members returned. This time, their approach was more aggressive. They parked their cars strategically, blocking access to the dock. "Alex," Mr. Thompson called, voice tight with frustration, "we've had enough. You must comply. You are creating a neighborhood conflict, and this will end badly if you continue." Alex stepped onto the dock, calm as ever, watching the ripples in the water. "End badly?" Alex said softly. "I think we are seeing who can actually control things. You see, the dock, the lake, the parking, these are not just conveniences. They are leverage. And right now, I hold all of it." One of the HOA members stepped forward, trying to intimidate. "We can fine you every day. We can take legal action. You can't win." Alex smiled, almost kindly. "Win? You call winning when you control pieces of paper? Let me show you what real leverage looks like." Slowly, Alex reached for a small, portable barrier, a simple thing, almost invisible from a distance. They set it at the entrance to the dock and the parking spot. Not locked, not aggressive, just slightly obstructing access. It was enough. The subtle barrier meant anyone trying to use the spot or dock would have to ask Alex. And now, the HOA had to negotiate. Mr. Thompson's face paled. What is this?" he demanded. Alex's smile didn't waver. "This is control. Simple, quiet, legal control. You want the parking spot? You ask me. You want access to the dock? You ask me. You thought threats and fines would work, but now, you are the ones at my mercy." The other HOA member muttered under their breath, frustration boiling. They hadn't expected such a calm, methodical response. Every escalation they had planned was now a trap. Every threat they made could be countered with a subtle move, a quiet reminder that Alex held the keys to the real power. Over the next few hours, the neighborhood watched the HOA's attempts to assert authority crumble. Letters piled up, but Alex didn't flinch. Emails flew back and forth, but Alex's calm responses revealed every weakness. Residents began to notice. They whispered, pointing at the subtle changes, the small barriers, the way Alex controlled lake access, and the parking spot that everyone needed. By evening, it was clear, the HOA's power was fading. Their escalation had backfired. Alex had turned their desperation into opportunities, each one making the HOA look weaker and more ineffective. The sun set over the lake, painting the water in fiery shades of orange and pink. Alex stood on the dock, watching the reflections ripple. They knew the HOA would not stop, this was just the beginning, but for now, the first major escalation had been handled perfectly. The HOA was frustrated, tense, and off balance. And Alex? Calm, confident, and fully in control. The quiet power of patience, leverage, and strategy had won again. The HOA could threaten, fine, and argue, but Alex held the most important pieces of the neighborhood, the dock, the lake, and the parking spot. And that meant every escalation they made only strengthened Alex's position. As night fell, the stars reflected on the lake's surface, and the neighborhood seemed peaceful once more. But anyone paying attention could see it, a bigger storm was coming. The HOA would not give up easily. And when they tried their next move, Alex would be ready, turning every attempt into another proof of their quiet, unshakable power. The morning air was sharp, crisp, and quiet. Alex had spent the night planning, thinking through every possibility. The HOA thought they were pushing Alex to the edge, but in reality, they were walking straight into the trap Alex had carefully set. The first move came subtly. A resident drove toward the lake, intending to park in the only spot near the dock. As the car approached, Alex appeared, calmly holding a small sign, reserved. Permission required. The driver hesitated, then realized something strange. Without Alex's nod, they could not legally or safely use the parking spot. Meanwhile, the HOA members were preparing their usual threats and letters, unaware that their every step was now being watched and countered. Alex had anticipated them. Every notice, every complaint, every attempt to intimidate was already part of the plan. By mid-morning, Mr. Thompson arrived in his usual confident stride, only this time, Alex was ready. "Mr. Thompson," Alex called, voice calm but sharp, "I hope you're ready for a demonstration of how things really work around here." Mr. Thompson's face hardened. "Alex, this is absurd. You can't." Alex interrupted, pointing toward the dock and the parking area. "I control this. Every inch, every vehicle, every boat that touches the water. You've been trying to escalate, but your attempts are meaningless. Watch carefully." With a simple gesture, Alex allowed access to a single car, but only after the driver explained their purpose. Another car tried to park illegally. Alex calmly denied permission, forcing the driver to turn away. The HOA's members watched in disbelief as Alex managed the lake, the dock, and the parking like a conductor controlling an orchestra. Then came the subtle genius of Alex's plan. Notices of violations and threats from the HOA had piled up in the neighborhood. Alex began strategically allowing access only to residents who were sympathetic or neutral, creating subtle divisions. The HOA, despite their legal letters and authority, was now powerless. Every step they tried to take to enforce rules failed. Residents began whispering, realizing that Alex, not the HOA, was truly in control. By afternoon, tension reached its peak. Mr. Thompson confronted Alex again at the dock. "You've gone too far," he shouted. "This is illegal." Alex smiled calmly, almost coldly. "Is it illegal to manage your own property, Mr. Thompson? To control access that you depend on? Or is it illegal to think that your papers and threats can push someone who understands leverage?" The HOA members realized it, finally. Their power was paper thin. They could argue, threaten, fine, but without Alex's cooperation, nothing would happen. Every attempt to enforce rules had been predicted, every move countered. Alex had not only defended their position but turned the HOA's actions into proof of their own authority. Every threat they made, every complaint they filed, only highlighted Alex's control. By the end of the day, the neighborhood had shifted its perception. The lake, the dock, the parking spot, they weren't just resources. They were symbols of real power. And Alex held them all. As the sun dipped behind the trees, the lake shimmered in golden light. Alex stood on the dock, calm, confident, and victorious, for now. The HOA had tried to push, escalate, and intimidate, but every action had only strengthened Alex's position. The final twist was clear: the HOA had been blind to the true rules of this neighborhood. Rules on paper meant nothing without leverage, strategy, and insight. Alex had all three. And in that quiet, golden evening, the neighborhood and the HOA knew one truth: the battle was not over, but the player in control had finally revealed their hand. Alex smiled slightly, watching the water ripple gently. The lake, the parking, the dock, they were silent allies, powerful tools in a quiet war. And from this moment on, every move the HOA made could be anticipated, countered, and turned into advantage. This was the moment the tides turned. And everyone who thought rules alone could control the lake, the dock, and the parking, everyone who thought they could intimidate Alex, would soon learn that true power wasn't given. It was earned, controlled, and defended. If you liked the video, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The morning mist clung to the lake like a soft veil, hiding the neighborhood in a quiet, almost eerie calm. Alex stood on the dock, watching the water ripple in slow, deliberate waves. The battle with the HOA had reached its final act, though most people didn't even realize it yet. The HOA had tried everything: letters, fines, threats, and aggressive confrontations, but each action had only revealed their own weakness. Every attempt to intimidate Alex had been carefully turned into proof of Alex's control. Now, the neighborhood was watching, quietly realizing who truly held the power. Mr. Thompson arrived again, his face a mix of frustration, disbelief, and something that resembled respect. He parked his car hesitantly, looking at the dock and the lake as if seeing it for the first time. "Alex," he said cautiously, we've realized something. Perhaps we underestimated you." Alex smiled faintly, calm and unshaken. "Underestimated? Maybe. But it's simple. The lake, the dock, the parking, they are more than conveniences. They are leverage. And leverage is power." The other HOA members shifted uncomfortably. Their confident postures, so dominant a few days ago, had crumbled under Alex's quiet authority. Without Alex's cooperation, their rules, their threats, and their bylaws were meaningless. "You see," Alex continued, "every escalation you tried, every fine you issued, every warning you sent, it all depended on me complying. But I control what happens here. I decide who gets access, when, and how. Your authority is on paper. Mine is real." Mr. Thompson swallowed hard, finally understanding the truth. The HOA had been operating under the illusion of control. But Alex's subtle strategy, patience, and leverage had revealed the reality: the HOA could not operate without Alex's consent. One of the HOA members attempted to argue, but Alex shook their head. "Save it. Every word, every action, every attempt to force me has already been accounted for. You cannot win here. The neighborhood has seen it. The lake has seen it. And I have controlled it all." The quiet authority of Alex, combined with their calm confidence, left no room for debate. Even residents, who had once been unsure, now whispered among themselves. They realized that the person who could control the lake and the only parking spot near it was not just defending their property, they were commanding the entire neighborhood's trust and attention. Alex stepped back onto the dock, the wooden boards creaking gently under their weight. The sun rose higher, glinting on the water and casting long, sharp reflections. The HOA's defeat was silent but absolute. Their power had always been borrowed from rules and fear. Alex's power was earned, rooted in leverage, insight, and control over what truly mattered. Now, Alex said softly, almost to themselves, the game has changed. The HOA can try to recover, but every move they make from here will remind them who really controls this neighborhood. Mr. Thompson nodded slowly, finally showing a trace of humility. The confrontation was over for now. The HOA would not push further without caution. They had been defeated, but without humiliation, leaving the door open for future tension. The lake shimmered in golden light, peaceful yet commanding. Alex smiled, feeling the calm of true control. They had protected their home, their lake, and their peace. The dock, the parking spot, the water, everything they had quietly leveraged, stood as proof that real power was subtle, strategic, and unshakable. And as Alex looked toward the horizon, one thought lingered: the neighborhood was safe, for now. But power, like the lake, could shift. The HOA might return, new rules could appear, and new challenges could arise. Yet Alex knew one undeniable truth: as long as they held the leverage, they would always be in control. The camera of imagination could zoom out, showing the neighborhood in a golden light, the lake reflecting every detail perfectly. The streets were calm, but tension lingered in the shadows, a promise of stories yet to come. Alex had won the battle, but the war for control of the neighborhood had only just begun. The story ended with a silent, cinematic moment, the gentle ripples on the lake, the dock standing firm, and Alex's figure strong and unshaken. For anyone watching, one thing was clear: this was not just a fight over property. It was a lesson in real power, and Alex had mastered it.